To continue our series with Changeling the Dreaming, I'm going to be spending some time looking at the way the Changeling Second Edition rulebook is designed and laid out. I will be looking, of course, at the system and the mechanics itself, but that'll be in a later video. So for right now, let's talk about Changeling the Dreaming Second Edition. Okay. Right off the bat, I can tell you that this is pretty different just by looking at it than a lot of other White Wolf games, at least as far as the exterior layout is concerned. It's full of bright, flashy colors, which actually really works in its favor. It lets you know that it's different, but it's still World of Darkness. The interior here, it has a nicely drawn map of the Changeling view of North America. It has a wonderful introduction on exactly what to expect from the setting and the mood and whatnot. And then it ruins all of my enthusiasm with a lexicon that contains 91 words or phrases. For those of you unfamiliar, a lexicon in a tabletop role-playing game is often put at the front of the book to help people learn what words and phrases might be used at the table. Some systems put down a bunch of stuff you might hear out of character, and other systems, like World of Darkness, put down things you're definitely going to hear in character. 91 words or phrases. Of these, about 20 are strictly necessary. The rest of them could have been better served as like a splat book somewhere, in my opinion, or at least sprinkled throughout the rest of the book instead of all up front at once. To a new person learning the game, this might be ridiculously intimidating, and it can be especially bad for new storytellers trying to explain the system, having to go through all of this and teach people what it all means. To move onward here a little bit, the book really starts with a story, as do all World of Darkness books. And it's alright. It's not the best, but it's not the worst White Wolf game story either. I think it, personally, in my opinion, it does a really good job of explaining the setting, which is already strictly better than like 80% of the stories in front of White Wolf games. But that said, it still lacks a lot of fun, for lack of a better word. It's not great. Let's just get moving on here. So the books in Changeling, or groups of chapters, are called Childling, Wilder, and Grump. And these are for your setting information, your character creation, and your game master or storyteller things in that order. At the very least, they named the chapters what they are. In some World of Darkness games, they just give them a title that doesn't necessarily always immediately make sense for what the chapter is, which can be a huge problem when trying to, navigate the book. So, the first chapter is all about kind of the World of Darkness itself, and about Changeling's roles in it. The second chapter has to deal with the way Changelings see everything and the chimerical reality, or the dual nature of things to the Changelings. And then the third chapter is where we finally get to take a look at the different kinds of fairies and some of the options for your character. I think that this is pretty bad design, that they should maybe save the setting stuff for somewhere at the end or the middle, or maybe just sprinkled throughout it. Just that people don't have to, read a novel to get to be able to start playing. And again, I understand entirely since White Wolf, early World of Darkness RPGs really depended on the meta plot and the bigger story. But come on, guys. After the little chapter on the different kinds of changelings, we have our character creation chapter, which is okay. It is like a massive wall of text, so it can be kind of tedious to navigate through. They do have a step by step character creation guide and an example character sheet partway through it. But I think this would have been better served split up into like maybe little info boxes and sprinkled throughout the character creation chapter. Just put in there to break it up a little bit. Also, in the character creation chapter, you will find skills and what each rank in a skill means. That's fantastic, but it probably doesn't go in character creation. I feel like it was just there to pad space, at least in that chapter. Following that, we have the arts and magic section. This is fine. It gives you a fair selection and explains how magic works mostly, which I'll be getting to in a future video on Changeling. But for right now, I can tell you that the game would have really benefited from having a little table or chart with a list of the spells on it, because it's sorted by what type of magic each spell is, which is fine, but they give the font for the different types of magic, it's almost exactly the same and almost exactly the same size as the different spells themselves. So it can be really hard to kind of navigate through. You have to take your best guess. All right, let's move on a little bit. The next chapter has to do with miscellaneous rules that the players might need to know, and that's fine and good, and the chapter is laid out well, and it has little tables to help you know what's going on. And that's the end of the second book, so let's move on to the third. And this is where it starts to get weird. So they said in the beginning of the book that the book itself, that the third section of the book was for storytellers. All of the rules here are things like combat and skill resolution, things that players might need to know. Like, come on, do you really want to have to explain combat to your players every single time because the book told them they shouldn't read the back of it? I'm probably being a little too judgmental here. But basically, the rest of this book is laid out in such a way that, like, you know, it's easy reading. One thing I will say for it, though, is that it does have an example of play that's tied to a comic book. So on the left page, you have the comic, and on the right page, you have the different panels of that comic with text telling you what's going on out of game. I think that is a really good idea, and a lot of RPGs could really be served well by that, especially more mechanical games like 3.5 or maybe GURPS. Anyway, moving on. The end of the Grumps section of the book is about crossovers, like with other World of Darkness games, but it doesn't actually give you rules for said crossovers. And if you don't mind me complaining here for a moment, World of Darkness books do that constantly. Like, across all of them, even with later books, they don't tell you how the mechanics of the different games actually cross over to one another. For the most part, you have to go out and purchase another book to let you know how it works. I will be reviewing the Changeling version of that extra book in another video because it's worthy of its own rant. Anyway, I give this book's layout a lot of crap, but just remember, Changeling is my favorite World of Darkness game. At least Changeling the Dreaming is my favorite classic World of Darkness game. And While I wish the book was laid out better, I think it's a pretty good game. And I'll be getting to the mechanics and the enemies of the game next time.